On this episode of Cancer Buzz, reducing drug waste at your cancer program.
I think as I take a step back and think through kind of how we got here today, obviously oncology is very tailored patient-specific doses. Often they're weight-based, and so we have very specific doses for our patients that aren't necessarily standard across the board. On the flip side of that, obviously manufacturers and commercial drug makers create standard drug sizes as best they can. And so there's a little bit of a friction, I would say, between those two as we're trying to get as tailored as possible in line with maybe a structured, regimented vial size. And so I think that's where the opportunity for waste really is created.
Welcome to Cancer Buzz. I'm your host, Summer Johnson. In 2018, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services said that $725 million worth of drugs reimbursed by Medicare Part B were thrown away. Of the top 10 drugs thrown away, 6 were cancer medications. The waste from those drugs alone totaled $330 million. In an effort to curb the rising cost of treatment, some cancer programs are working on ways to reduce this waste using solutions like different sized vials, drug vial optimization, and forming oral drug repositories to help patients in need. We heard from Dr. Anthony Boyd earlier in the show. He's the Oncology Pharmacy Manager at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. He spoke with us about his cancer program's efforts to reduce the waste and operate more efficiently.
So obviously when the JW modifier was introduced as a way to really bill for that remaining drug waste, I think it brought a visibility to the forefront in the sense that oncology waste became more on everyone's mind. And I think that in tune with the cost of these agents continuing to rise. So whatever we can do within our pharmacy teams to be able to help mitigate that is really, really important. So I think there's an increased visibility that I feel like I've seen related to this. Outside of that, I mean, it's been interesting. There have been some commercial manufacturers that have introduced new vial sizes to the market that allow you to get a little bit more tailored in your approach to how to best prepare medications while minimizing waste. And so I think there has been some movement on the commercial side as well to have us partner together in this in trying to reduce waste.
Dr. Boyd, for your program, was there any instigating event, or what was the thought process there to begin looking at the drug waste?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that as we took a look back, we were really just trying to better explain from a simple term the ins and outs of where our drug went, right? So we know how much drug we purchased. We know how much we were providing to patients. And from that math problem, as simple as it seems, there were some areas that we really couldn't explain. And as we dug in a little bit deeper, what we uncovered and where my involvement really began was a number of the agents were in the oncology space. And as we really started to dig deeper and we really got a multidisciplinary team together to take a look at it. It was myself, our Associate Chief Pharmacy Officer, our Director of Informatics, our Director of 340B, our supply chain folks. Everyone was really trying to uncover these problems with data. And what we realized is that a few of the agents were in oncology. And so as we dug more deeply, what we found is that some of that potentially could have been attributed to patient waste. So we underwent some initiatives there to more tailor how we care for our patients to really minimize that waste, to be able to explain, hey, we purchased this drug, this much was given, where did the remainder go to, and really continue to shrink that amount.
What's the role of the oncology pharmacy or the oncology pharmacist in reducing drug waste?
I would say it's the whole pharmacy team, both pharmacists, technicians, even our folks on the pharmacy billing end, right, to help. It's a complete coordinated effort. From a pharmacist standpoint, and even a level above that, from an administration standpoint with our providers, I mean, we do have the opportunity in some of our health records to potentially dose round where able, obviously where it's still clinically appropriate, but round to whole vial sizes, right, to minimize waste. So that's one of the initiatives that even expands outside of the pharmacy department, and work very closely with our pharmacist and our electronic health records team to be able to optimize some of that. On the boots on the ground level for our pharmacists and technicians, our pharmacists are very much involved in the billing aspect within the electronic health record, but then our technicians are also very involved as they're helping to select the right vial sizes to minimize waste.
Can you walk us through the steps that your program took to reduce the waste?
We've had some dose rounding in place for an extended period of time, both with our chemotherapy agents and our monoclonal agents. So I would say that's one of the first steps that we had taken. It really predates my time here. I've been here for about 3 years, but we had put some dose rounding in place to get closer to the optimal vial sizes. Obviously, that's a continual effort, even as new drug companies release vial sizes and things like that, kind of updating our records to reflect all of that. So that's really a continual iteration of a process. Beyond that, I would say as we had some increased visibility to potential waste, that's where we really started targeting it. From that standpoint, we really went drug by drug, right? So a top-down list, hey, this agent's on the list. What are we going to do to mitigate waste? And we took a top-down approach and really more of the 80-20 rule, so targeted those agents we were most concerned about that had that potential for waste and worked our way down. We would implement a process for our technicians and pharmacists to get closer to the optimal vial size based on the patient doses, bill for that remainder, and I guess implement and check is the process that we used. And we tried to target it by a month-by-month basis. So, hey, here's the drug we're really going to target this month, work through mitigating that waste, look at the results and see were we able to demonstrate that and were we able to reduce that waste, and then tackle the next drug for the month. And as we did that, they really became habit. People were doing the right thing. And so that's really, we went by in a step-by-step approach from there.
What about results? Did you see any right away in reduction of waste? And then what about long-term? What are you seeing now?
I would say results-wise, we've been able to reduce what I'll call that variance, so that discordance between what we purchased and what ultimately reached the patient. So we're able to reduce those for those targeted agents. And then the next step that we've really tried to do is all of this is a very manual process, right? From the billing on the front end to the technicians using the correct vial size in the clean room. And from there, our new spin on it is how do we automate where we can and be able to use some of our technology systems to be able to do that, to make a very complex process as simple as possible.
There are several technology-based solutions available in reducing waste. Did you use any of these, and what were your experiences?
When I tried to highlight the automation of a complex process, we really did go down a partnership with our vendor, which we have to maximize the use of our chemotherapy robot to manage some of this, right? We have some chemotherapy robots here that actually help prepare doses. And we really tried to work with those vendors to, I guess, flip the model for how these robots handle waste, right? I mean, historically, robots are programmed to be precise and as efficient as possible. And so when you think about efficiency, you're going to use the largest vial size to minimize the number of sticks into a vial, right? But we had some conversations, even at a user group level across our sites, to be able to think through how do we handle some of these high cost agents, and is there a different way to think about it? And so in the past year, we've worked on developing kind of a waste mitigation platform. And what we do there is we're able to program specific drugs that we want to target to minimize waste, in the sense that you obviously lose a little bit of efficiency, right, in terms of using the correct vial sizes to minimize that waste. But the robot is programmed to have the technician load those vials in there to minimize that waste, because we realized how important it is to lower the cost of care as best we can. And that's one of the things that we can control. So what we've done is kind of reprogrammed how we've worked with that system to select the right vial sizes to minimize that waste. And what we've realized, we're working on quantifying some of that now, but it has worked really well for our teams to help them automate a complex process. And especially when you get to some of these vial sizes that aren't clean numbers that all line up equally, having an automated system to help select those that will minimize waste is really, really important.
So how do you decide which of the strategies that you can tackle? You can't do it all at once, right? So which ones did you start with, and how did you make those decisions?
From a prioritization standpoint, where we started was with obviously the agents that we had the biggest opportunity. So that's how we prioritized to start. Obviously, the processes that we implemented were very manual to start. Involved a lot of upfront work for the team, a lot of manual tracking on the back end to make sure everything flowed the way that it was supposed to. And so what we realized from there is, hey, we're not going to be able to do this forever, right? So yes, we can put these manual processes in place, but we need a guarantee that this is going to continue. And so that's where we knew it would take longer to work on how to automate some of this. And so we started with, hey, we need to fix the problem today, or how do we tackle this today? But long term, how are we also going to put systems in place that help automate? And that's something we're still striving for, because obviously the process of manually billing the JW modifier occurs before these doses hit our clean room. And so how can we automate it and partner with our automation vendor again to automate those processes from the time the order is verified to the time that it's prepared to the time that it's checked. So that's one of the strategies I'd like to look at on the horizon. Obviously, that takes a little bit longer as well. And so it's kind of, taken the biggest area of opportunity and then getting a manual process in place, but then from there, working on how we automate has been our goal here.
You said you're working on quantifying some of your efforts. How do you test the strategies and then gather those metrics?
One of the ways with which we've done it is those month-long runs, in the sense that, hey, we're going to target this drug, we're going to look at every JW modifier, we're going to look at every vial used and be able to quantify that on a month-by-month basis. But as we did drug A, we went to drug B, and we don't have a good way to go back and look at drug A other than those kind of quarterly updates we get as we go back and look at our inventory and do that big math problem that I talked about at the beginning. So our data has been very manual, and that's how we've reviewed it. So what we're working on is how to be able to capture that. So I guess I know more in real time how we're doing versus kind of these month-long snapshots, if that makes sense. And so trying to continue to transition us to be more proactive versus reactive. I mean, I think very early on, we were very reactive in how we tried to target some of these, and it was just based on areas of opportunity that we had. But I'm continuing to kind of press and work with our teams to identify solutions to be more proactive and monitor it. And if we need to take care of something sooner, we have the data to be able to do that.
So the whole pharmacy team, including billing, was involved in putting these strategies in place to help you reduce waste. What other departments did you need to reach out to for help to kind of assess the problem and then tackle it?
Most of the groups were within our pharmacy team, but we have so many different facets of that. So worked closely with our supply chain team, right, to help kind of work through some of these and figure out if there are alternative vial sizes and things that we can bring in to hopefully mitigate waste. Worked very closely with our finance team to be able to not only pull some of the numbers, but help us analyze it and see what kind of impact that it would have. I primarily have worked at our main campus infusion location, but we all share the same electronic health record. And so working with all of the various sites to put solutions into place that are going to work for each of our sites based on infusion volume, where we have a large amount of staff, right? We have a large amount of patients that come through here per day, but we have some smaller sites that may only have one pharmacist and one technician. And how do we develop solutions that work for both parties, right? And so we work very closely at a regional level too, because we're all in the same electronic health record to make sure everyone was on the same page. So working with the pharmacists and technicians at each of those sites as well, not only here in our main campus location. Worked very closely with our electronic health records team to kind of reconcile where we were at and put the billing parameters on for each of these different drugs. And so worked very closely with that team. I circle back a little bit. I think that we've worked very closely on some dose rounding policies as well. And so that works with our physicians teams, our nursing teams to help review some of those and make sure clinically everything's appropriate. So that's one of the other groups that we've worked with. So it's not just pharmacists, technicians performing the work. I mean, it's a large coordinated effort, multidisciplinary, and I think everyone understands the importance of it. And so it's something we've continued to strive for here.
Let's talk about the future. Are there any more techniques that you're hoping to implement to reduce waste in your program?
Yeah, one of the things that we have a data analyst that we work very closely with him really since the inception of this project. And he's always pushed for how do we continue to automate this within our electronic health record? And I don't know what that answer is quite today, but I would like to continue to work with not only our automation vendors, but our electronic health record vendors to help, I guess, maximize those systems to align with the vial size combinations that we're using to minimize waste. And so that's an area for, I would say, continued growth and continuing to work with the various electronic health record vendors to solve or help us solve what's a very complex problem. The good thing is our inventory system now aligns with our health record. And so there's an opportunity, I think, there. All the data is there, but it's how to kind of piece it together in the right way that helps to accomplish this challenge. And so I have promised that we're in a good spot, and I think we can work on figuring out a way to help automate it. Because obviously I want the pharmacists and technicians to work on the care of our patients, right? And the clinical care of our patients. And so if we can find a way to kind of take that piece out of it, of kind of taking a step back, focusing on the clinical care, not having to worry about billing and correct file sizes, any way that we can do that more seamlessly is the goal, I think. So I see a future on the horizon and something we can continue to work for to help optimize this.
Talk to your colleagues that are listening in cancer programs, big and small. They're looking to reduce drug waste. And what are the takeaways from your experiences? How can they get started?
I would say finding the data and identifying maybe where some areas of opportunity are. So looking at, hey, what you purchase and what patients are receiving, and really almost completing that gap analysis for some of your higher cost drugs to identify if there's any opportunities. Obviously, taking a look at the dosing schemas, and if they're flat doses for patients, then those probably aren't the ones that you're going to worry most about. But if it's a tailored weight-based dose, an expensive drug with multiple vial sizes, those might be areas of opportunity. I would say talk to the folks doing the work every day too, right? I mean, asking the technicians, hey, which vial sizes do you end up with a lot of waste at the end of the day, right? I mean, it's some of those simple questions that can help kind of frame maybe where your greatest areas of opportunity are. So talking to the pharmacists, talking to the technicians, and understand maybe where there's some area of opportunity in the processes. So those would be kind of the three things that we took a look at. Really was the data, asking the why in those questions to understand kind of where the areas of opportunity. Yeah, those were kind of the things that we worked through and what I'd recommend to other folks moving forward.
You can find the latest information and reports on oncology pharmacy in the show notes. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Cancer Buzz. If you've been enjoying the show, and we certainly hope you are, we'd appreciate it if you would share it with a colleague and leave us a review. This helps professionals like you find us, and it lets us continue creating the resources that you need. Next week on Cancer Buzz, we resume our special series on cancer care during the COVID-19 crisis. Get that episode delivered straight to you by subscribing to Cancer Buzz for free on your favorite podcast app. Until then, for the entire Cancer Buzz team, I'm Summer Johnson.
Cancer Buzz is a resource of the Association of Community Cancer Centers.